Hi, welcome to the P.A.C.E, P-A-C-E, acronym, not a word, for the Northeast HamXposition in 2025. My name is Rory Griffin. My call sign is W4RJG. I live in South Boston, and it was a good way to get here this year. It only took about 12 hours. And you're wondering why a full 12 hours when Boston is not that far away from here in Marlboro? But my South Boston is in Southern Virginia, so that's why it took a whole 12 hours. But if you want, because I was raised in New York City, I did live in upstate New York for a few years as well. I don't have my Brooklyn accent, but if you like, I can go and bring back my Brooklyn way of talking, which is going to be kind of like the old South Boston way of talking. And if you want me to do that to make it more local for you, you let me know. All right. Thank you for taking the time for coming to this session. I always appreciate when everybody walks in the door. If possible, if you could hold your question until the end, that would be very much appreciated, of course, as well. I've been licensed since 1983. I'm an extra light, which means I don't have certified Morse code capability, and I can tell you I really don't have much Morse code capability, let alone certified, other than when I first got my license as a novice, so I could prove I could do 5 words a minute. And that's about all I can do. And that's stretching it. But you always want to know Morse code because you can use anything that creates a sound pattern for emergency communications, and it just has to be a pattern of noise. It doesn't have to be clear, just recognizable. I have a GMRS license, and I do have 2 local repeaters I operate. I'm currently the emergency coordinator for Halifax County in Virginia. I'm also the Assistant District Emergency Coordinator for District 3, which runs in the center of Virginia from Maryland all the way down to the North Carolina border, which is where I live. I've got areas and various communities experience in New Jersey and New York City because I lived in New Jersey, worked in New York City, and I got to be able to participate on both sides of the Hudson River. I am associated with CISA through the OXCOM program as a registered OXCOM trained operator, waiting for my final certification, and a COML, which is communication leader, and that also is waiting for various signatures. It'll take a little bit, but the knowledge itself can still be applied. I don't have to wait for signatures to say, you can now start using this knowledge. I'm a shares operator, involved on the HF side, and also I have an HF RMS station for shares, and it's not fully functional yet. One more thing to do, and we'll be off and running. I've done some other major events. The New Jersey Multiple Sclerosis bike fundraiser, and that ran up and down the shoreline. Always a pretty drive, right there along the ocean. And it was the bicycle riders came and went as they could at the starting and ending gate, which is at the north end, and they would go as long as they could, turn around, come back. So we had ambulance corps up and down the entire Jersey shoreline all day long. So lots of different kinds of health and welfare traffic that would be going on, as well as SAG vehicles with bicycle repair kits, because things will happen. They get a flat tire, they need a tube repair kit. So they had a lot of interesting functionality you normally don't run into. But it was spread out all over the place along the shoreline. I did New York City Marathon, mile 4, which means they were still, full of energy. They had just come off the Verrazano Bridge, so that was a 1.5 miles downhill slope. So that gave them extra energy to keep on going. So there was a lot of intensity that was running in front of us, and another level of intensity because I got involved after 9/11. So we had the very serious extra security that was around on the street level and on top of buildings. Did the Salute to Israel parade for quite a few years, and that was fun just because it was a fun parade. It is the second biggest parade in New York City after the St. Patrick's Day parade, which means it's big, because New York City has a lot of parades. But it is the second biggest one. Always was fun to do. It was where we did various things of communication that was really important, because last year they went with a cell network, and that really didn't work out well. The cell phones worked, the people didn't know how to use them effectively, and we wound up becoming the communications to help control the flow of the various groups coming out from all the streets down at the bottom of the parade, south of Central Park, if you know that part of New York City at all, and feeding into the parade coming up Fifth Avenue. And then now communication would have to confirm the order of those groups to the grandstand. So when they got announced, it would always be done in order, because there were, 100 different groups, so they didn't all know each other. But it was always fun to do, and got to be really close to various notable people at the grandstand when my job would require me to be stationary, which included our current president. Like him or not, he's still, a personality, and he was a big, well-known personality in New York City, to be sure. In 2022, I did the first field day in my county for the first time in about 15 years. The amateur radio community had just depleted itself in a lot of ways. The 4 repeaters had gotten down to 2, and so with the EC promotion, I used that to create a level of legitimacy and put in an effort doing something 7 nights a week to promote the hobby in any way that I can, and it worked. Somehow, I don't even know how it worked, but it worked. And we have now grown, lots of operators, some new operators, and now we have all the repeaters back up and running. They have expanded the DMR repeater that we had, and the repeater systems that we have are now connected into Fusion as well, which we are regularly connected into a Fusion repeater system that runs along the northern portion of North Carolina from one end to the other. So we have nice expanded communication for fun and things about the hobby, and find other interesting people all around. And be surprised how many people are not initially from North Carolina. So with that, it got me going in a lot of other different ways. So I became active now in various national nets and groups promoting effective MCOM communication capabilities for the average operator. What I mean by average is these aren't programs designed for the leaders only. This is just for whoever wants to be involved in MCOM. And I am an alternate network control station for WinLink Wednesday. If you don't know what that is, it is every Wednesday a net just to do a WinLink message. You only need to do one, but it makes sure that your software stays up to date, and it keeps your muscle memory going a little bit if you don't use WinLink a lot, especially if you're doing MCOM and you're going to be for a few hours operating a WinLink station. You want to make sure that you know how the whole thing works. So throughout the month, we have various ways of creating messages and how to go find a form that's built into WinLink and use that. So it's got some neat little aspects to it. I operate at 40 meters, which when I started doing it, I was the only one on 40 meters. We now have a small cadre of alternate net control stations that do P2P only. And if you don't want to do P2P, I recommend you should. But there's always, then you can just put out a standard RMS message, whether it be on VHF or HF. It just wants to be RF, if at all possible. I am a member of the EDM Steering Committee, a founding member, meaning I was there at the beginning. And that was about 3 years ago, officially a little less than 3 years ago. We branched out of ETO to become a P2P only. And our two main things are, one, P2P as the main functionality, as we have a design system for when all else fails. And that's point number 2. It's designed for when all else fails. For what you're going to be getting shown, it is the E in P.A.C.E. Just think Hurricane Helene, everything's gone. That's the way to view it. We help people learn how to operate in those conditions, how to find each other, and how to have a written plan for your group, whatever your group happens to be, and make some good use of what resources you have available, whatever that might be, without any kind of real confusion. Have become certified in licensing for testing for 2 different groups, and have participated in a number of tests to help people either get their license, and because of my extra status, getting all the way up to it, including an extra as well. And we've had that happen in my county now a few times, which is really cool. I am also been involved for about 2 years with Army Mars, and I'm a very regular participant with the net, as you should be, but also know how to run a net within Mars, and it has some particulars about it that's different from others, which is nice to know to have. So, On to what is PACE, P-A-C-E, with periods in between each letter. So, officially, from the National Committee Statewide Interoperability Coordinators. I'm going to read it because some people learn better with auditory learning capabilities. And so for this long-winded definition, for them, I am going to read it. Everybody else, you, of course, can read and learn anyway. A PACE plan helps organizations establish predictable and redundant communications capabilities in changing operational environments. Having redundant communications methods in place and sharing these among users help achieve interoperability and continuity throughout the emergency communications ecosystem, particularly in challenging environments. Yes, that was a lot. Now, let's put it out in simpler kind of English, breaking it down. One is plans as each capability disappears, and the next level plan with more limited capability gets to be put into effect. This is what PACE is not. It is not a document well thought out to show politicians and bosses that a really great plan exists and never really used. It is also not a plan for team members to read and then to think the leaders are pretty impressive for writing all of that out. It's not what it's for at all. Now let's talk about what PACE really is. PACE is, first, by definition, primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. It all starts from drilling down, putting your plans together. And drilling down means it's not just one level. Every event is a project, whatever it happens to be. A parade, helping organize a picnic for a large group, or a real deployment for a real emergency situation. They all have a beginning and an end. And every project has some main components in putting a project together, whether it's spontaneous as an emergency or a planned event. Risk management is one of the initial key elements. You have to know, or in South Boston talking, you got to know what's expected and what are the potential points of failure. Doesn't say how big that potential is, just that it is a potential. And you have to have written plans. There is a negative and a positive risk management. For the longest time, risk management always implied negative, but there is a positive risk management as well. So PACE is applying that to any resource management needed for any problem solutions. Notice the word radio isn't mentioned once yet. This can be applied to any businesses you're involved in. What happens if? Come up with anything that might happen to your business. What happened to your equipment? If that is part of what your line of business is. Workers are resources. Team members are resources and suddenly not available. So it's also for your home. You want to be planning the what ifs for up around this area. What if the hurricane comes in and creates super strong winds and a tree crashes on your house and you no longer have any place to live? It wiped out your cars because it whacked out your garage with the cars in it, because of course you put the cars in the garage to protect it from any damage from the storm, but yet it still did. What are your plans? That's the kind of thinking that PACE is useful for. Regardless of what organization, entity might be involved, this can be applied. It's a plan to be put into continual action. It's not something that, okay, we lost that, so we're going to go to a hotel. You got somebody to drive you to the hotel, and then you're going to rent a car from Enterprise, and so you have to stop thinking about PACE. No, you have to still be adjusting as things change. So, to start the whole thing, it's first using creating or fully reviewing your emergency operation plan and your memorandum of understanding. What's really inside that memorandum, what's really expected from you in serving them, and what are your plans, and have you thought out when the plan can't really go forward. The second major effort is making it part of the template, designing exercises and drills each year. So I'm asking a question. You're doing an annual review of your exercises and stuff every year, right? Because Some people have left, and some of them were key members with personal capabilities or technological capabilities. And you've got some new members that you want to make sure that they're onboarded into the system completely and fully. So annual review of your regular type exercises. This is where P.A.C.E also comes in as a critical use. Little side note to help you out there. Third, you want to make sure that your ARRL advanced members, and if you do not know, ARRL has changed their level 1, 2, 3. Jason has put out new tests that are more modernized to what really is out there today, including things that are not specific ARRLs, but you want to keep in mind. And so advanced is a level 3, and so you want to make sure your advanced members are using this all the time. They're the ones in the lead in various ways. So you want to make sure that they have this understanding. You also want to make sure your ARRL intermediate, your level 2s are aware of it, because they can be helping as things get adjusted. And even in non-ARRL MCOM groups that you work with, if you have relationships with a Red Cross with some of their communication units, Salvation Army has some communication units, mostly HF. I understand that that's back up and running. Any other group that you might be working with, keep this in mind in working with them. And if they look a little weak, you might be wanting to help them with this kind of thinking, just to help them become better. It's always best so when the critical needs occur, everybody's at their best capability for what resources are available. Now, with P.A.C.E, we're going to go through each letter, and this is the first letter, primary. This is when you have all your resources. Everything's fine. All the stuff is good. Resources are the hardware component operators in front of them. All the wires are there. None of them are frayed. Yay! Just the way you like it. It meets the needs of your served agencies. Top of the line first always. It's not what you can do. It's what they would like you to do for them. Like can also can be translated to the word need. Now, this is where I'll bring in positive risk management process. And by that I mean is, here in our kind of a world, let's say you hear the opportunity that you can get a grant so that you might be able to get a trailer and get it supplied with shelving and some electrical wiring in it, and then you get to put whatever in it that you want. And they have grants available. Did you take advantage of that grant? Did you pursue it? Because a positive risk is something that is a risk to have to go after, and if you don't get it, you're going to lose out in some which way. But it's not that you've lost something, but the potential for gain is something that is a potential. You want to translate it into reality. So don't miss out on those kind of positive capabilities that you might be able to get. That would be positive risk management. And again, that's part of your annual review. People who are connected to grant methods that are out there. Here in Virginia, our emergency management for the state does have some grants that they make available for all sorts of types of things. Make sure that you're keeping an eye on what is your state's doing to say, ooh, let's use that money, see if we can get a grant out of them. And maybe be a bit entrepreneurial if resources are available to acquire. And that's part of positive risk management. Or just be looking out there. Entrepreneurial is you kind of make things happen. If you're looking to, let's say, get into Arden, using the Wi-Fi to create a local control secure internet on site, wherever you happen to be, you want to be having somebody keep an eye on eBay and Amazon for used equipment to help get you started. That would be an entrepreneurial way of thinking. The next letter is A, alternate. Now, this is when most or maybe some of your resources are available. You're feeling it, you're not in pain. You feel something, a little sore, but you're not in pain yet. And it can be due to the effects of the disaster. Your members are impacted or loss of equipment. It does happen. We've already lived through a COVID-19, but let's say there's just a major viral flu that has hit, and since most of us are no longer under the age of 50 who participate in this, we're a little more susceptible to a flu virus. So it's more of a pandemic situation where the people are impacted, the equipment's sitting there just fine. So that's alternate. No, there's some kind of an impact going on. And that's when you start thinking out the negative risk management in putting your plan together. Is what happens if we lose Charlie? Because Charlie's great at setting up a pop-up WinLink station that runs HF. So we have a donut hole coverage to get in and out of that area. So you have to start thinking at all those different types of risks. So you have to know your resources and think of how each resource will get impacted. A resource is a person and various equipment. And your trailer has to make sure you have a vehicle to move the trailer. What are the resources you use to move the trailer? Really think it out and make sure you're covering all those points. That's why you only do it once a year, because it does take time. And once you've done it once or twice, it's a review of those things, then it's easier to think of other things or things that have changed. You're not coming up with everything, but when you're even reviewing, kind of do a zero accounting method, which is make believe it hasn't been done yet, and don't assume that it's been already covered. Including some losing capabilities in the middle of an event, which certainly can happen. You're out in the middle of wherever it is, and it's not in an urban environment. You're out there with woods and rocks and trees and people who walk and stumble and fall, and they need an ambulance to get out of there. You've lost that person. How are you going to make adjustments? How many operators will you need for this, for that? How many operators do you have total? How many can you cycle around in a 24-hour day period? Think those kind of things out. And what's not so clear, but prioritizing those resources will help in the middle of a downsizing mid-event. You can do without the pop-up HF RMS station because it's not critical for within the event. It just means now you have to have a little more of a long wire situation of get somebody to then get the message, maybe a 2-point relay over to the EOC that then can get you out into the RMS world and get messages out for whatever the need would be. Now we're into C. Now we're into contingency. And now you're hurting. There's definite more than discomfort going on. It's much less than optimal capabilities available. Various plans may be needed. In my IT career, where I was always involved, pretty much from the beginning in my career, of disaster planning, which would be, in a mainframe world, the loss of the computers, and then as we got phone line communications to work with remote terminals outside of the building, what happens if they go down, what do we need to do, things like that. So it's more always about the equipment failure, but then because of 9/11, we had a whole new level of thinking out a pandemic where the buildings are just fine. It's the people who aren't. And it's a completely different way of thinking. You need to do both. Loss of equipment and loss of people as two unrelated things, but actually can be concurrent as well. So each one needs to be identified separately first. Then you want to apply those two losses to create all of your potential thinking of just how bad is it going to be. Because we're already in a contingency. It's going to be bad, but how bad can it be that still is under this contingency? What's your bare minimum would be one way to be thinking about it. What is your absolute bare minimum to make things happen in the support that you want to give? And at this level, it would be less structured, but more points to consider. If you can't get any guaranteed pop-up VHF or HF station, what are the various things you can do without it? Maybe it's you're stringing along 1 or 2 mobile units, and the in-between mobile unit is dual band mobile. So he receives on one band and retransmits out on another one. So he acts kind of like a jumping point repeater without actually being a repeater. But he's just extending the line out from point A to point C by being a point B to make it all happen. Now it's emergency. Now it's bad. Now it's really bad. I've lived through it a number of ways. So I'm going to tell you the little stories to let you know I understand E. 9/11, my building was 1 block north of the World Trade Center. By the grace of the Lord, so directly I do mean that. I worked very late that night and had been working so many late hours that I had the opportunity to go to the Vista Hotel, which was right there at the North Tower. But I went, no, I haven't seen my family much. I don't have to go to work early in the morning on time. So let me just be there in the morning, see my kids, because I know I'll have to be working late again for coverage for the new things that we were working on that was going live that Monday night. And it did. But I was that late because we had some problems. So it wasn't until 2 o'clock in the morning that we were done. So I said, no, I'm not going to a hotel. It's a really nice hotel. Room that was just waiting for me. I said, no, I'm going to get a car service. Customer paid for it. And let me go home. Because of that, I was home and was awakened to phone calls about the attacks that occurred. Now, I got a lot of personal involvement. No people who died because they didn't get out of the buildings. No definite one fireman. I think a second one. It can still affect me at times after all these years. It took a while to get over it. But more importantly for where we're at right now for this discussion is this is what E can be. 1 block north of the World Trade Center, directly North Tower, is a smaller brick building. It still stands, and at the time, it may have been 9X, I don't know if it was, it was Verizon by that time, and when the North Tower fell, because the strength of the buildings was the outer shell of the building was the strength of the building. Every other building in New York City, as the case with just about every skyscraper around the world, the core strength is in the middle, the core. But the core strength of the World Trade Center, by design, because of earthquake potential, it was the skin that was super strong. So when the building fell, it imploded within the skin, contained the fall of the building, which is why, I mean this sincerely, only over 3,000 people died. It otherwise would have been a much larger number, easily 10,000. But when that came down, one of the big sheath skins that was still very much attached to itself as coming down, went up against and slid along the south side of that Verizon building and went down through the street. When it went through, the following happened within, figure 3 seconds. It cut through all the regular landlines from all the buildings, hundreds of buildings, all throughout Lower Manhattan. It was the main exchange. And so they all got cut instantly. So that meant landline telephone service was gone. It went through every FiOS line. FiOS is the internet lines for Verizon. So that meant all internet capability was destroyed. So all phone systems that ran on FiOS, internet-based, they disappeared, as well as all communication systems that used the internet for communication was gone. That's it. Then it went and cut through the water main that was down there. Everything's down in the street in Manhattan. And then it flooded all the equipment, so nothing was going to be working. No, go in there, quickly repair things. It was now just turned into a total disaster. So all Verizon-based capabilities disappeared. Of course, when the North Tower fell, that's where the TV and radio tower was sitting up on top. And you look at pictures, and it's a black and white tower. That tower was 30 stories tall of its own accord. It was taller than quite a few buildings in New York City, and certainly than most buildings all around America, except in the heart of major New York cities. So it was quite tall. It had lots of communication networks, mostly broadcasting. But also on top of that was, obviously, all New York City emergency communications would be up there because it would cover all of New York City. New Jersey State Police, the northern sector, ran off of that, and it got into all parts of New Jersey on the north part. So New Jersey State Police suddenly had to go flipping to their backup systems. All kinds of other repeaters that were up there, because I had been up on top of the South Tower looking at all the antennas on the South Tower, and lots of them over on the North Tower. So lots of communication facilities disappeared. And then later in the day, the New York City EOC was already evacuated because there was a fire in that building, and then it collapsed, not directly from the planes, but because of the fires that developed and because of the 8 tanks of diesel fuel to run the generators caught fire. It's a slower burning, but eventually that building collapsed. So New York City lost its main EOC for the entire city. So it had to go through all kinds of other contingency planning as well when the North Tower fell. So in a matter of a few minutes, major communications, RF and wired, was gone instantly, affecting New York City and surrounding state. So that can happen due to man-made events. That would be the summary point. About 2 years later, Hurricane Sandy came through, and it wasn't a typical hurricane, but it had a very low pressure, so it flooded parts of Manhattan that never were flooded like that before. New York City subway system flooding pumps couldn't keep up for a day or two. Staten Island, which I grew up on, there was flooding in areas where the ocean never ever got to before, but it did this time. Over in New Jersey, where I was raising my family, the winds were super strong. A tree on the hill that I was living on, which was about a 20-degree angle, maybe 25, a large oak tree was blown uphill, uprooted uphill. Now, expand that out to all the established suburbs with all the power lines that ran on the utility poles through all the oak trees that had been planted and now all full bloom and big and luxurious, and they took down thousands of lines and hundreds of transformers. So we were out of power where I lived for 10 days. So anybody with any kind of a backup system, it got drained. Gas station, therefore, and that would include diesel fuel, didn't have power to pump at all. So diesel fuel for backup generators for first responders had to be imported differently than had ever been done before, and it couldn't be done anywhere close to where we lived. They had to go way west into New Jersey or even into Pennsylvania to find fuel sources to be brought in. So I've seen a man-made event that cut out communications all over the place. All the ham radio repeaters that were in that affected area, which is, I don't know, a couple hundred square miles. First responder units had to be dealt with differently than usual. And cell phone towers were out because they didn't have their backup power. So I've seen it where just nature will cause these kind of things. The latest one would be what recently happened with Hurricane Helene, where a hurricane, for those who are not aware of Appalachian Mountains in the southern end, hurricanes never stay hurricane force once they get 300 miles or so inland. Whether they come in straight off the Atlantic Ocean, and certainly if they run up the Florida panhandle and run and tear through Georgia, South Carolina, and then once you get that far inland, it's no longer hurricane strength or barely hurricane, but Hurricane Helene stayed hurricane strength into the Appalachian Mountains. The mountains and just the structure of the mountains, it didn't have the capability to allow the water to just flow out very quickly and safely like in all the lowland areas because of hundreds and thousands of whatever years developing that flooding capability, taking the water away. And the water would be, they had rivers 30 feet above level. 30 feet. And it happened in a matter of hours because there was that much rain and it all got concentrated into the valleys inside of the mountains. With that, it took all kinds of communications and wiped them out. I mean, wiped out. Not that they were disabled, they were gone. Tower was gone. So for that whole swath going into the western part of North Carolina, up into Kentucky and Tennessee, they have never experienced anything like that before. They lost everything. That would be emergency. So we have seen it happen. You have to plan for it because that proved you just never know. So be ready. Think it all out. So that means, so I wrote down here, maybe a cell phones or not, portable electricity or not. I'm saying or not because you could be losing some parts, most of it, but plan for not on everything. Except that you have people at home. What we teach in EDM is you could be safe at home and you have your emergency capabilities, you have your emergency power sources, and you have secured enough equipment that you can actually get on the air and start providing radio support. Either just local community or involved with a group like ARRL. But you have to be ready for any and all of your usual ways of providing support. Don't exist. What can be done at the most basic, minimal level. So you have to be able to not only know what it is, but to have a plan written out so everybody knows. A key part of what we do in ETM is so everybody knows what can be available. What operators do say that yes, they can get on the air, and where you're going to go to find each other. You got to know HF propagation. You have to have assigned frequencies ready to go. You really don't have to care too much about interference, obviously, at that time. But you want to have a plan of where to go, how to find each other. Plan with the tools at least once a quarter to make sure that everybody knows how to keep it going, the latest version of the program, all that regular type of thinking. So, with that, that covers it all, what PACE is about. I'm kind of glossing it over. There are some people who explain it a lot better, but for those who haven't been introduced to it at all, I want to make sure that you do have this at least as a starting point for you. So, the CISA has resources, Department of Homeland Security, /CISA, and then Google search PACE and see what you find. And just everything else that they have, and in the category of what's called ESF2, Emergency Structure Facility, number 2, which is communications, which is what we would be part of then. Search the internet for various documents of the groups, YouTube presentations. One that I would recommend is Wave Talkers, WAVETALKERS. They have a whole bunch of things on YouTube that would include how to think these kind of things out without identifying specifically as PACE, but it's all MCOM related. Then you do all that research, look up at what EDM has, just to kind of see a little bit. We don't have a lot of public stuff, but just know what we're about as another way to how to think things out. And then when you get all that information, then pull out what's important for you, what's salient. What are key things that you know that you want to consider. Heat stroke is not going to be a big thing up here. It is for Florida. Snow up here is a big thing. Not for Florida. Hurricanes, that you guys got in common. Now, I've worked in an urban environment in Manhattan, and because of 9/11, I've worked in Midtown Manhattan and Lower Manhattan. So each part has some very, very different needs from an urban perspective. I've lived in a crowded suburban world. I grew up in a semi-rural suburban world. I now live in a rural world. I raised my kids in a growing suburban environment when I first got involved with emergency communications. So each one has different needs that is geographical, weather-related, politics, what else is in the area that is critical, different ways to think of things. So the bottom line is you have an incomplete plan with PACE. Now, when I say incomplete, it's not going to cover everything, but you want to have a plan ready to go with, because it can't cover everything. But you must have a written PACE plan. You need to make that part of your EOP, if possible, and make sure it's spread around so people understand, who have any levels of responsibility, as to what's going to be the next stage if something goes worse. If they say, we're only going to be getting a tropical storm, and suddenly you get smacked with a Cat 2, well, things are going to get worse. So you want to bring in and start thinking contingency as a regular method of operation, because more things are going to be affected than if it was just a tropical storm. Things like that. Or you're only supposed to get 6 inches of snow, and all of a sudden you got 18. It happens. Now, this is how I got smarted. You like that word? I got smarted by learning from others. the most primary way from a continual basis. They haven't been doing shows for a while yet, but they have lots of stuff up on YouTube already. I learned by a group called Wave Talkers, and it is very professionally done, very thoughtful. They don't try to cover everything. They cover everything they can within that 1 hour or longer presentation, and it's done with very experienced people. They know what they're talking about. For me, by getting involved with EDM, because I really liked wanting to know more about the P2P, as well as, gee, what if it really goes bad? I gave you 2 stories that I lived with in New York City that you gotta be prepared for when all else fails. Oh, one little side story, as even stupid little things that'll be more localized, regional, but it'll happen. A bunch of fools last year in North Carolina decided to shoot up a major electrical substation and destroyed it. Caused short outs, various equipment failure. So for 10,000 people, they were suddenly without power, and the electrical company couldn't just quickly get things up and running because it wasn't a transformer that failed. It was every piece of equipment that got shot at through the fence. So you just never know. So I learned a lot by doing this, plus lots of other experiences throughout my life and my career life. I started 2 tech support departments. I've been part of disaster planning for most of my IT career, which was 45 years total, and pandemic planning after 9/11, because we had to be thinking that out. So I've been involved in a number of different levels of, you got to think out what if. That's the summary of this whole thing, what if, and you drill down into various, how bad can it get. Keep in mind with the risk management, you may have things that only have a small potential. An electrical substation is no longer functioning, whatever reason. Idiots or just a bunch of trees fell on it. So the potential for that is very small because it really pretty much doesn't happen. However, the impact is like really, really big. So you have to plan for that as if it's going to happen. It's not how, the expectation of it happening, but it definitely could be, when it does happen, it's going to be major. Those are the kind of things that you got to be thinking about in all of this. So with this, thank you so much for coming, as always. Really appreciate it. Thank you for the attentiveness. I hope to see the possibilities for your organizational improvement, how to make yourselves better prepared, better ready, maybe even for your home or other non-amateur radio things, whatever that happens to be, the usefulness of the P.A.C.E plan, and there are a lot of other, and I'm sure much better resources for you to learn from than what I've done for you today. I hope to see that I might even hear from any of you when I post all of this, and you respond back to let me know how you've been able to use it. I appreciate that. If you want to contact me with anything else about this, you can send me a WinLink message to W4RJG. You can email me at W4RJG@ARRL.net. If you have questions that you think that I might be able to do something that could be useful, let me know.